in West Africa particularly, the concept was the extended family. And obviously slavery broke that up in terms of bringing Africans here. Whole families were not brought together, but there was a tradition for the extended family. And so even within the system of slavery, there were usually black males who would take on the role of the father figure and provide as much as possible some security and safety for the children. And so this was a way for black men to be involved with their families.
That African spirit, if I can use that language, really was the very thing that allowed us to be on a plantation, to have children, to have semblance of a family, and that be totally disrupted by the whim and will of some vulgar masters. We still had a sense of, that's my child. And that wasn't broken. I think the idea that you my child, that you my man, that you my woman, all that kind of emphasis on belonging, not as ownership, but belonging as proper connection. Like my hand belongs on my arm, my eyes belong in my head. That's the kind of belonging we had. It wasn't ever ownership. Now what slavery tried to do was to translate our meaning of belonging to their meaning of belonging, which was chattel ownership. And so that's the struggle we've had, because we're internalizing their meanings of things.
In slavery, first of all, the Africans were separated. So the people from the same ethnic group were purposely separated from each other so that they couldn't speak to each other, couldn't communicate to each other, could not continue to share values and things like that. They couldn't even talk to each other. So that's the first mixing of it. So that by the time you get here, you don't see somebody that you knew from there. And then after one generation, people weren't born there anyway. See what I'm saying? So and they're passing on their traditions orally because they couldn't write, all right? So they very quickly jumbled the African and its culture, all right? Because the first thing you have to do to enslave somebody is take away their culture, their identity.
And there was an attempt to really destroy that. I mean, there was really systematic attempt to destroy, to cut off our belief systems that were African. But it wasn't successful, but there was clear attempt. All those black codes, all the laws that were really prescriptions for, you can't let black people do this, you can't let them do that, you can't let them do that. All that was designed to take away from us volition, take away from us will, take away from us intent as African beings.
So at first, they weren't interested in marrying people, slaves marrying each other. But I think the system realized that to keep the people quiet, it's a more refined system to let them marry, because you do want them to have kids, because you need them for enslavement.
The slave owners realized that they had a financial value in these slaves, and the more slaves that you had, the better off economically you were. So there was no attempt to discourage that.
So they tried to instill some kind of process at the very same time that they're raping the woman, and the man is watching. The black man and black woman may have been married. That did not prevent the master from coming in and raping.
We had black folks falling in love and making a lifetime commitment to each other in the height of slavery. How did I look across, after being beat down and tortured and sometimes maybe even castrated, how did I look across the yard and see a young lady and fall in love? And sit down castrated and write her a poem? See, that's amazing stuff to me. How do I just look in the torture of oppression, I still can see the spirit of this woman, and she sees the spirit of me, and we gravitate to each other, and we make a lifetime commitment.
Members of families had to be left behind on what we call the Underground Railroad as slaves were escaping into the northern part of the United States and Canada. There were attempts to find family members, even if those family members were on another plantation. And there have been cases where some black men and women made round trips over and over again on the Underground Railroad trying to find family members so that they might bring them to freedom as well.
I think slavery instilled in us a profound sense of shame. That black fathers, black men in this country really walk around with an internalized, profound sense of shame that gets overcompensated for. And that profound sense of shame is that if you are my child and you are my woman, but I couldn't protect you. I could not protect you from the horror of this. It's just plain bestial, savage environment. I could not protect you. And so we've internalized that. And part of that internalization is to, in some ways, act like the oppressor ourselves. And so it's easier for me psychologically to say, you an object, and I own you, as opposed to you are divine, and your belonging to me makes me divine. See, that's a higher level of responsibility. If I say you divine and I'm divine, I gotta resonate at a different kind of vibration.